Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman? By Patricia and Frederick McKissack. The gathering was large, but for the most part congenial. Suddenly the doors swung open, and a tall, proud figure stood framed in the doorway. "It's Sojourner Truth," someone whispered. Slowly, Sojourner walked to the front of the church, noticing she was the only black person there. Since there were no seats left, she took a seat on the steps to the pulpit. She folded her arms and listened. Soon the room was buzzing. Was a black woman going to speak? One speaker after another came to the podium, each trying to impress his or her opinion upon the crowd. Several preachers tried to disrupt the meeting by encouraging women to leave immediately. When that didn't work, the preachers used the same tired logic that had been used for centuries to oppress women and blacks. God created women to be weak and blacks to be a subservient race. Another man quoted a newspaper article which suggested that a woman's place is at home taking care of her children. What? Thought Sojourner. Nobody ever gave me that opportunity. During a brief intermission, a group of women cornered Frances Gage and questioned whether Sojourner would be allowed to speak. They were afraid that having a black woman speak might confuse the issues and even discredit their cause. After all, what has women's rights to do with abolition? Some of the leading ladies were threatening to leave. "Let's just see," Mrs. Gage answered, making no commitment either way. When the next session began, Sojourner approached the pulpit. No, don't let her speak," several men and women called out. Sojourner turned to the chairwoman, asking for permission. Gage hesitated momentarily, then simply introduced her. Sojourner Truth. That's all that was needed. By then, Sojourner was used to facing hostile crowds. Fearlessly but gently, she took control of the situation. First, she removed her sunbonnet, folded it neatly, and set it aside. Her slow, deliberate movements had a calming effect on the audience. With no prepared speech in front of her, she began in a deep, husky voice. "Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. The white men will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this about anyway? That man over there," she said, pointing to a minister who had said a woman's place was to be mother, wife, and companion, good sister, and loving niece. Among other things, he also said women were the weaker sex. To this, Sojourner took issue. "He says women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages, over mud puddles, or gets me any best places." And raising herself to her full height, she asked, "And ain't I a woman?" Sojourner turned to the men who were seated behind her. "Look at me!" She bared her right arm and raised it in the air. The audience gasped as one voice. Her dark arm was muscular, made strong by hard work. "I have plowed and I have planted." No doubt she was remembering the year she had worked for Dumont to earn early freedom. "And I have gathered into barns, and no man could head me." She paused again and asked this time in a whisper, "And ain't I a woman? I have borne children and seen them sold into slavery, and when I cried out in a mother's grief, none heard me but Jesus. And ain't I a woman?" She challenged the widely held belief that women were less intelligent than men and blacks had no intellect at all. Her common sense ripped at the core of the people's hypocrisy. Few listeners at the time could understand the full import of what Sojourner Truth was really saying in that hard-hitting "Ain't I a Woman" speech. It is doubtful the rural community was ready to accept the claim that took women's rights across the boundaries of race, class, and the bondage of slavery. Sojourner's truth was simple. Racism and sexism were unacceptable to people of good reason.